Alright, so today I want to go over the tips and tricks for going to a reptile show, whether you're going to buy or you're going to sell something at the reptile show. So there's typically three kinds of people that go to reptile shows. Number one is the buyer. If you're going to buy something, maybe a snake or a reptile or maybe a spider or something like that. And number two, there's the sellers, the people that set up the tables and vend at the reptile shows. And anybody can go to a reptile show here in the USA. It's just a matter of paying for the table. Usually it's between probably $100 and $150 to get a table. You can get a whole bunch of tables or you can get a corner booth. A lot of different options for vending at reptile shows. Or there's the people that go to reptile shows kind of as tourists. You know, they bring their camera and they're just going around taking pictures of everything and they're not really interested in buying anything. As a matter of fact, when I'm standing behind the table, I can kind of tell what people are really doing at the reptile shows. You know, a lot of people are just taking pictures of everything. That's perfectly fine. Some people are, you know, kind of making a beeline past my table. They're looking for another type of animal. And some people are just, you know, beelined on what I have on my table. They're just, you know, looking for something to buy, kind of going, you know, back and forth, trying to make, there's a lot of people that kind of do laps around the shows and they're trying to figure out what they want to buy. And I would say, so if you go to these reptile shows, usually it's a 2-day show on a Saturday and Sunday. Most of the shows on Saturday, on the very first day, have what they call a VIP entry. You get there an hour early before everyone else gets there. The tickets are a little bit more expensive. It's a VIP ticket. And really the whole advantage of going VIP is that you have first pick of all the animals in the show. So a lot of people that are really serious, maybe they watch some of my videos and they say, hey, I want to buy that snake that he just showed me that said that he's gonna have at the show. They get in line, try to be first in line, VIP, they're first at my table, and they buy that snake. So the other thing you have to think about is if you're looking for reptiles or snakes, I'm kind of a snake guy, so I'm gonna kind of look at this from the perspective of buying and selling snakes. And if you're in the market for buying some ball pythons, it's pretty much all I deal in is ball pythons. Let me tell you, most of the stuff that I sell, I would say sells on the very first day before noon. So if you can get there earlier the first day, the earlier the better. You know, your stuff starts flying off the table, and if you come pretty much the end of the first day, I have a lot of empty spots on my table from people buying some snakes. And kind of the biggest mistake I see a lot of people do is they'll come the first day, the very first day, and there's a lot of people, I have a lot of stuff on the table, and they see something, they say, I want to buy that snake, but I'm going to look around to see what other people have and what the other prices are, see if I can get it at a better price, and I'll be back to buy that snake. And let me tell you, 90% of the time they do a loop around, they come back, and that snake is sold. So I would suggest if you're going to a reptile show and you see something you want, you should buy it on the spot right there, unless you are considering, you know, letting that go to someone else. Some of this stuff goes really fast. I've seen a lot of people get really disappointed as far as, you know, kind of doing the loops around the shows, coming back, and it's gone. The other thing you can do is if you want to buy it, a lot of people let you keep it in the display so you don't have to carry it around, and you can pay for it and just put sold on it and then your name. I do that a lot. You know, this snake is sold and it's got the guy's name on it, and you can just keep it in there for, you know, until maybe later on in the day when you want to pick it up when you're ready to leave the reptile show. So the other thing, as far as purchasing snakes at these shows, I would say a lot of people have asked me, do you take credit cards? You know, do most people take credit cards? And let me tell you, it's kind of like the people at the shows, I say a lot of them are just like me and you. We just start breeding snakes, we're getting into it, and we have a bunch of snakes, and we want to sell them at the show, and we show up, and most people, I would say, when they're first starting the shows, they don't really take credit cards. As a matter of fact, you can take credit cards for anything, and it's really easy. And what I use is Square. It's a whole program. You can put it on your cell phone. As a matter of fact, if you sign up for Square, all you have to do is download the app, and they give you a little card reader that just plugs right into your phone, and you can take credit cards anywhere, which is pretty amazing. And they take, I think, like 3%, 3 to 4% of all the purchases. And as a matter of fact, it's really handy. If you want to take credit cards from anyone, anywhere, you can sign up for a Square account and it goes right into your checking account, which is pretty handy. But keep in mind, you're spending about 3%. So I'd say if you're going to the reptile show and you want to buy a snake for sure, I would definitely have cash in hand, and make sure you have enough cash just in case you're not sure of the price. So speaking of prices, there's another big mistake that I see vendors make. So if you're selling snakes at a reptile show, let me tell you, I go up to some of these tables and it's like night and day between the tables. We get to the end of the show and I'm like, hey, how'd you do? And some people will say, oh yeah, I just crushed it. I sold a lot of snakes. And other people say, man, I didn't sell anything. It was a terrible show. It's amazing. Right next to each other, table next to table. And let me tell you, one word, the difference is morph market. And morph market is pretty much the standard for snakes and ball pythons and boas and corn snakes and everything. I mean, they keep adding more and more categories. And the funny thing is I really want to buy a snake, and I keep going up to all these tables at the show, and they're all overpriced. So for example, there's a snake I want to buy, and I can go to morph market. That snake is about $400, and then you figure the shipping on top of that. I can have that snake for $450 shipped to my door. And when I'm going around in the reptile show, everyone has the same exact snake marked at $750. And let me tell you, these guys that are looking for snakes, that are looking to invest in a breeding project when you're first starting out, you are obsessed with morph market, and you have all the prices in your head, and you know what the prices should be, and you really can't scam people or try to get more money for your snakes. Most of the time, if you're vending at these reptile shows, you kind of have to get out of the mentality of a pet store. So a lot of times a pet store will buy really low, double the price, and sell it to kind of the general public, just people wandering into a pet store. And a lot of people in the pet store, I would say it's out of convenience, where they walk into the store and they're willing to pay the price. But let me tell you, if you're selling snakes at a reptile show with a whole room full of guys who know their snakes, they know their prices, they know what it should be on morph market, it is almost impossible to get higher than market prices for some of these snakes. As a matter of fact, a lot of these reptile shows will say, they'll advertise the show and they'll say, come to our show, there's discount prices. So really what that means to me is people coming into the reptile show, they expect a discount on their snakes. They expect reasonable prices, even better than reasonable. As a matter of fact, most of the stuff that I sell, if I see something on morph market, say for like $300 plus shipping on top of that, $350, you either want to be at $350 or below, so people just can't go on their phone and go, oh, I can just buy the same thing right on my phone right here on morph market. You really want to give them some incentive to buy at the shows. And I would say kind of, with that said, I would say there's sometimes when you can actually charge a little bit more for certain snakes. So for example, I sell bamboos, like this guy crawling on my head right here. And as a matter of fact, when I got into bamboos, most bamboos, I'd say they start in a pretty wide range. If you get a little bitty hatchling, they start from anywhere from $250 to about $500 for a hatchling. And when I was looking on morph market, when I first got into bamboos, I found this guy for $1,200. It was really, really expensive for a bamboo. And the reason I bought it is because it is a really high expression example of the morph. If you take a look at this, this is a really beautiful snake. It is amazing. And you look at some of the bamboo morphs on morph market, and really some of them are kind of washed out and a little bit faded. And let me tell you, if you get something that is a really nice example of that morph as a breeder, and you breed it through your collection, what you're essentially doing is you're multiplying that for the years to come. So then you end up with a whole bunch of hatchlings that are really nice examples of the morph. So sometimes it pays to invest a little bit more in a really good example of the certain snake that you're looking for, to really, especially if you're looking to breed it and advance into a return on investment. So I'd say another thing that a lot of people I think could really improve upon as far as vendors, and that is supplying heat for your snakes. And for my display, essentially what I have is I have a really professional ARS rack system for my display. It fills the whole entire table, and I run heat tape under all my snakes, and I have a thermostat and it's set to 90 degrees. As a matter of fact, a lot of people always say, you know, it's not really good to bring snakes to a reptile show because it stresses them out. And as I found, it's exactly the opposite. My snakes love reptile shows. Let me tell you, when I bring them back from the show, they seem really a lot more tame and mellow and a lot happier after the show. And the reason is because I have them on this 90-degree hot spot for 2 straight days, and I have a lot of people handling the snakes, so they lose their fear of people. And I have so many snakes, you know, if I hatch out like 60 snakes and I have them in my display case, there's no way I can handle all those and really tame them down. Versus if I bring them to the show and I'm always handing out snakes and they're putting them back in the display, kind of everybody handling the snakes, it really tames them down. They love the heat on the display, and it really chills my snake out a lot. And the other thing, one of the big things as far as using heat under your display cases is, matter of fact, I went to the Denver Repticon once, and it was really cold and snowy, and it was late in the year, and the wind was really whipping, and someone was right next to the door, and that wind was coming right into the door and hitting their display case. And I thought, oh my, if my snakes were there, I'd probably pack up and leave the show if I didn't have any kind of a belly heat under my display cases, because my snakes would be so chilled. So I kind of walked through the show. As a matter of fact, I don't think I see more than like 1 or 2 people with belly heat on their snakes. And you leave your snakes there overnight a lot of times, and really I think what they need, it's essential that they need some of the belly heat, you know, for the shows. You know, some shows it's pretty comfortable and climate controlled, but the thing is, especially if you're near a door and it's really cold and windy, then you really don't have, you know, the protection of the whole building to really keep that heat in, and it's really essential for belly heat. So that is pretty much all I can tell you about, you know, going to the reptile shows. It's a really exciting time. The other thing is I've had some people say they wanted to buy a snake, and the crowds just were so big that they couldn't make it over the table to buy a snake. That's another thing you have to think about. I actually went to the NARBC one of my very first years in ball pythons, and it got so crowded in there. I was in the middle of an aisle, and we were just shoulder to shoulder, front to back, and I couldn't move for like 2 or 3 minutes. We were just jammed in the aisle. It was pretty incredible. So, you know, some people may get a little claustrophobic in some of these shows. I've seen that before, but you know, sometimes, you know, if you're a little bit claustrophobic, probably what I would do is I would go towards the end of the second day. Speaking of the second day, so there's really a big difference between the first day and the second day. So if you get there the first day, I would say if you really want to buy a snake, have the most variety of snakes. You go there the first day and you have a lot of stuff to choose from. But I would say on the flip side, there's not a lot of people that are willing to negotiate on the first day. As a matter of fact, I had someone come up to my table on one of the first days and says, hey, I'll give you, you know, $400 for those 3 snakes. And I'm like, I'll take 800 because I know there's another day. Plus, you know, last weekend was a reptile show. This weekend, there's another reptile show. So you kind of have to think of that too, because, you know, I can sell these snakes. There's a really high demand. I'm selling them really fast. Why would I I take a discount on these snakes. They're priced, at market price. It's really, the discount is really not an option for me. And unfortunately, I said no on that one. But on the flip side, if you get there on the second day, especially like this weekend, on the second day, if you come up to the table and you say, hey, will you take, a discount for the snake? I'd say a lot of people will take less money on the second day, at the end of the day, especially if there's another few months before the shows like there is now. The next show is like in October and the show's in June, so there's quite a few months before the next show. And it's either I sell it at the end of the day for discount, or I'm gonna have to feed that snake for another 3 or 4 or 5 months until the next reptile show. So if you're looking for a deal, assuming there's some snakes left on the end of the second day, then it's probably a good time to maybe make an offer and get some snakes at a discount. And then on the flip side, there's a lot of people that they pretty much, their snakes are pretty much priced for market value as far as, what you can get for the snake. And a lot of people, they just refuse to give a discount. So for example, if you had a hatchling on the table and say the market value is $350 and you had it listed at $350, why would I want to take a discount where I could just post it on Morph Market and sell it tomorrow for $350? That's the other thing you have to think about is, we can unload these snakes really fast, posting them on Morph Market, which is kind of like the standard pricing for everything. And a lot of people won't go below market value on certain things, especially kind of like the high demand stuff, like, I find like the bamboos or the clowns or the pies and stuff like that are really in high demand. It's really hard, I would say, to get a discount as far as a buyer, because the seller could easily turn around and sell it other places pretty much at the same price. So that is pretty much it. Hope to see you at Denver Repticon in just a couple days. I'll definitely be there with the table set up. And be sure to bring cash. Get there early if you're looking for a snake. Otherwise, just go and have fun. And I will see you at the show.